Hey guys, okay, so this video is all about food sensitivities, intolerances and allergies. And it's really all to do with food related inflammation. That's what this is about. So this can be a long and slightly complex subject, but I'm going to break this really down for you because what I want you to understand is so many people don't know the difference between the three: intolerances, allergies and sensitivities, and even more aren't even aware that they exist. And this is the key. So I want to really just sort of explain the key differences in this video. So let's just break that down first. The fact that an intolerance is the lack of a specific enzyme in order to break down the food you're eating. So let's think any kind of food. If you haven't got the enzyme for it, you're going to struggle to break that down. So it's enzyme related intolerance. So when we consume a food, enzyme like salivary amylase in your mouth, that helps start breaking down simple carbohydrates, or the enzymes pepsin, protease, lipase, which is breaking down pepsin protein in the stomach, or the protease and lipase or lipase starts breaking down fats in the small intestines. And so we're going to look at the fact that in order to help us digest our food fully, it has to be broken down into the smallest possible particles so it can be absorbed through the line of the gut, via the liver, out in the bloodstream to give us what we need. Okay, so let's take, since I'm lactose intolerant, let's take lactose as an example. So lactase is the enzyme that breaks down lactose, which is the sugar in milk in dairy. Okay, so what happens from the age of about 0 to 5 is we've got a lot of lactase, which is secreted from, I'll just remember, the small intestinal lining. Okay, so that's where that comes from, whereas other enzymes actually come from your pancreas. So lactose at the age of about 5 dramatically decreases, which is why a lot of people have problems with it, which is why I had a problem with it. So the possibility of having intolerances in those instances is higher. But if we go through a good elimination diet, for example, possibly some good testing if that's ever required, to clear out the gut, get back some balance, and bringing down that inflammation, then we're likely to clear a lot of those things out. In my experience, even though I've had intolerances, there's very few permanent intolerances for a lot of people. I've realised that I can tolerate a small amount of dairy, for example, but it has to be full fat, has to be organic, has to be minimally processed. And I'm okay with that, but I don't really tend to have it because I know it still causes a level of inflammation because it's very common. So, but I don't want to spend too much time there. I just want to give you a bit of insight. So, with regards to food sensitivities, it's probably one of the least researched areas of immunology. I can't say it, but probably some of the most controversial because of the tests are just really terrible. For example, I've had intolerance tests myself in doctors, and they just measure the wrong markers. And I think even things like York testing, there's a lot of testing facilities around the UK that are pretty bad as well. There's only one or two that I really know that are really highly rated, that I've been directed towards. So I'm very conscious of that I want to get the right results if I ever use testing. So a food sensitivity is immune regulated. So an intolerance is an enzyme. It's enzyme regulated. It's all about enzymes. Sensitivities and allergies all to do immune regulation. So it's all about your immune system, either your immediate, which is your allergy, so if you're allergic to something, you have an immediate reaction to it, or an adaptive immune system response, which is more to do with sensitivities. So for example, if you're a celiac, of course that's a wheat or gluten allergy, you're going to have what you call an IgE reaction. That's the immune response, which is immediate for allergies. And so that immune cell, the IgE immune cell, will react very quickly. So in extreme examples, you'll have anaphylactic shocks, for example. Peanut, if it's a peanut allergy, swollen lips, or worse. This is a very extreme reaction. But what happens with food allergies is there's the delayed response. So it can be anything from a couple of minutes up to 72 hours, 3 days. So you may eat something on a Monday, for example, but you don't see any kind of symptoms until let's say a Wednesday evening. And so it's very, very difficult to pinpoint just with generically eating, I suppose, what's going on. So that's why with a few sensitivities it gets complicated, and I think it all depends on your level, your ability to digest food, to break foods down, and if you overburden those pathways within your body, then your level of sensitivities might go up and your inflammation might go up. So with regards to diet-induced inflammation, really we've got three main areas. We'll have the food allergies such as celiacs, so we want to keep away from gluten at all costs because we have an extreme reaction to that. But I really want to get you guys to start thinking and considering the effect of food and chemical sensitivities. Now these are the things where have this 70 up to 72-hour delayed reaction, and this is the things that most people just dismiss, whether it's brain fogs, headaches, skin issues, all kind of stuff. These are can be symptoms of things we are eating that your body is having a reaction to because of certain levels of inflammation in your body. So first, what I would always recommend, which is what you guys are doing now, is cleaning up your diet with a good elimination. So make sure there's no bugs in the gut, because if you're going to go for any kind of food sensitivity testing down the line, it really is the last thing that you should do, because you might have infections in there might be other things that needs to be cleared out first. Elimination is the first step, of course, but there is other things to consider. So things that, so what could bring this immune system level up, this level of inflammation? Of course, said parasites, bacterial infections, yeast infections, fungal infections, or emotional stress. All these things can affect the immune system. So if we can bring these things, if we can create protocols to bring these things back in line, such as things sleeping better, reducing stress, good hydration, nutrient-dense foods, all the boring stuff, then the level of sensitivities will likely go down anyway. And this is why we're doing what we're doing right now. So there's three levels of diet-induced inflammation. So we can have a food allergy, which is, I think it's around 46% of the population. You can have an autoimmune element to it, which is about 3 to 5% of the population. And then you can have things like food sensitivities, which are estimated by 30 to 40%. Now it's a massive increase, and you can just see that diet-induced inflammation is a big thing, and it does come from food sensitivity. So if you're struggling with things such as IBS, migraines, fibromyalgia, GERD, asthma, ADHD, autism, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, for example, these are the kind of things that food sensitivities will massively affect your level of inflammation in the body, and that level of inflammation will raise cortisol levels, which then imbalances hormone regulation, which we spoke about before, because of course as soon as cortisol goes up, it affects hormones. It raises insulin, for example, it raises blood glucose levels and all that kind of stuff. So one thing to really consider with regards to sensitivities that affects the adaptive immune system. That's one of those things that over time it can build and build and build, but it's not something like it's an immediate reaction. So this is why we can have reactions to healthy foods as well, like turmeric or salmon, for example, or even like some kinds of fruits and vegetables. We can have that kind of reaction to food, sensitivity reaction to food, because we've got a level of inflammation. So let's say, for example, you could have pineapple and have a reaction to it, but if you had done some kind of testing and knew how to read the testing, that you would actually see that was really just the icing on the cake, because we had already have this kind of inflammation because of this food and that food. And it's something that really needs to, you can really address that through different testing. But again, it's the very last thing I would really consider once we get all the other stuff in line first. So I think this is why building the diet is such a personal thing. I know I give, when I do, I give sort of nutrition guidelines, it's always to do with foundation level first, because I'm very aware of individual tastes, individual reactions and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, for example, salmon, even tin salmon's always going to be better than tin spam, for example, but you could still get a reactivity to the salmon. So we're always having that awareness that there's always something else, there's always a why behind the why. So food sensitivities can make a big difference to you, and so I wanted to make this video because I think it's probably one of the key missing elements of how you can drastically improve your health first before you go down any kind of route. We can actually bring this, bring awareness to it. So if you're going through the elimination diet, which you guys should be now, and you've taken out the main issues, the main foods that are reactive to nowadays, the levels of the elimination diet, like whether it's 1, 2, or 3 that you're going through. And it's not necessarily because they're bad foods, but it's definitely overconsumption of foods. It's definitely overconsumption over a long time period and exposure to all that kind of stuff, which then raises inflammation over a period of time. I remember when I first went to a nutritionist, she said I shouldn't be eating wheat. I wasn't a celiac, but I had a reaction to it. 2 secs. That's me smart meter. I'm overloading. When I went to see this nutritionist, she said you shouldn't really eat wheat more than once a week because you've just got an overconsumption of it. And when I thought about it at the time, I was eating it with every meal. I mean every meal. And it just shows you how bad my nutrition was back then. Weetabix or some kind of shitty cereal for breakfast, some sandwich, then some pasta-based thing. It was just wheat. And there's so much to it. So be very aware of how much you eat. But again, the common things like wheat, gluten, dairy, soy, they're ones that most commonly eaten, but also the most common reaction to those foods. So anything can be an issue if you eat too much of it. So that's why the rotation diet's a good thing, which we'll get onto later. So if you've gone through elimination diet, whichever level it is, and you've seen radical improvements, and of course that's brilliant. Then we can start adding back foods in one at a time, and again we'll get to that in another video next week, where I'll show you the protocol for reintroduction and then seeing whether that was actually a food that reacted to you. So what we'll look at then, if you're not improving, what else could be left in your diet that could be causing you issues. So if you start to take things away and you're still not improving, then it might not actually be the food. It might be a genuine problem, because remember, food sensitivities can be toned down or they can be turned on depending on the level of inflammation. Depends on what else is going on as to what we look at. So for instance, an example of that would, if you had a parasitic issues, inflammation issues, like I said, you can become a lot more sensitive to a lot more foods, because your immune system's already higher. But when those issues get cleared, this is when your body comes back down into more of a balance, more homeostasis, which is then that allows your body to be in a better balance, and you're less likely to react to foods. So it's one of those things where we get to do all these things first and then see where we are. So if you are struggling with autoimmunity, for example, some kind of autoimmune disease, celiac is an autoimmune disease, then food sensitivities become a very big thing because it makes things worse. So it's something that you should absolutely look at, food sensitivities, if you have an autoimmune condition. So one of the things that really got my interest with this was what I saw was a huge amount of skin issues. There was a lot of psychological things as well, like depression and lots of different reactions. So this can be very much related to food sensitivities. And I don't just want to say it's one thing, but this is why in this health reset we're looking at not just cleaning up your food, we're not just looking at the detoxification at the end, but we're giving you information which can start empowering you and so you can make changes over a period of time. This is why I said it was not a rush. It's not a race. It's about education. It's about action. It's about feeling and adjusting accordingly. So in order to really take back control, my main aim for you guys is being able to see the differences. So the difference between intolerance, which is enzyme related and not immune related. Then the food sensitivity, which is immune related, but it's in different immune cells to an allergy. Because allergies is using Ig, for example, which is an extreme reaction, and then food sensitive things like IgA, IgM, IgG, different forms. And those immune cells, those are the ones that take a couple of minutes up to 72 hours to react. So, and of course, then there's the allergy, which is the extreme reaction, which is pretty much instantaneous. So you're always going to know. Let's use an example. Things poison ivy. So the first time you might be exposed to it, I don't think you really get that in this country, in the UK. But the first time you get exposure, it might not be a big issue, but your body will then adapt and have a bigger immune response, and create loads of antibodies, and therefore, that second time reaction or exposure to it will be more extreme. And that's the body that's the body doing a great job, but having that huge reaction to it, and it's something that it doesn't always help you, of course. Sometimes it can bloody kill you, which is not great, obviously. So it's something to be aware of. But what I would say with regards to food sensitivities, it's, as I said earlier, it's something that you look at at the end of a health journey, when we've done the elimination, when you've done the detoxification, when you've measured the blood glucose levels, for example. So if somebody come to me and they were having issues with gut inflammation, reflux, diarrhea, constipation, whatever it might be, skin issues, not sleeping very well, there's lots of different things going on. You could run like a food sensitivity test at the beginning, and you might feel better at at the start. But if you don't get rid of the other issues, like any kind of infections I mentioned earlier, parasitic, fungal, yeast, all that kind of stuff, then it'll start coming back over time, and then the immune response will build and build again. So it's something that you've got to look at the end, after you do all the other things. So it's just getting things cleared up, understanding what's going on, whether it's some kind of infection, are these infections controlling your blood glucose levels, parasites, for example, take control of the host. And I'm not saying this to scare you, because there's lots of different things around. They're not always a bad thing, but sometimes they are. So they can control blood glucose levels. They can control your adrenal levels, how your adrenals function. They can, so it's about having a bigger picture, that step back picture, instead of focusing on the one thing, knowing all the other things as well. So I mean, as I said before, you can react to foods which are healthy. You can have sensitivities to health food, and this is why we do the identification phase. This is why we do the elimination diet, so we can understand more about how you're feeling, how you react. If it's something whether it's an enzyme deficiency, which is an intolerance. An example of an intolerance, you could be getting excessive bloating over time, gas, belching, that type of stuff. But that happens usually within a couple of hours, like that kind of thing. And I'm sure you've noticed that yourself. If I have any kind of dairy, my nose blocks up, excess mucus, and it's usually over a period of 1 or 2 hours. But with sensitivities, as I said, it can be a little more severe, long-term kind of symptoms. For example, your gut can blow up, or you can have immediate reflux, skin issues, brain fog, whatever it might be. So they can still have quite a reaction, but it might take minutes to hours, up to 3 days, to kick in. And of course, you'll know if you've got an allergy, because it just gets straight in there. So I think this is what I wanted to really cover the video, just the differences between the three, what they were, what the potentials are, what we need to do first before we consider anything else. I think that's it. Oh yeah, one more thing. I just want to talk quickly about what we do with the rotation. Now I mentioned the rotation diet. I've put this. There should be a rotation diet document in the group that you might have had a look at it. It's very interesting. So one of the ways we can help people with sensitivities and tolerance issues is that we can actually have them reduce their level of inflammation from emotional stress and physical stress from training, for example, whether if they're not sleeping enough, parasites, bacteria. One thing we can do is reduce diet-induced stress, and the way we can reduce diet-induced stress is by having a rotation diet. Now, if you've looked at the document, it's a very simple thing to do. So by going on a rotation diet, it's very simple. It's just helping people create a bit more variation in their diets. Because as humans, we're very habitual creatures, and for example, we'll eat porridge every day of the week, or we'll have something like every day for convenience or ease, and we're very, as I said, very predictable at what we do. I think there's a list of something like, I think it's 15 foods that we eat continuously, and then there might be a couple that will vary month to month. So variation of foods is something that's very, very good to do, that we're not very good at doing, because we become creatures of habit, and again, convenience, can't be bothered to think what we'll eat, I'll just eat that then. So, essentially a very basic rotation would be like a 3-day rotation. So, for example, on Monday you might have white fish, beef, eggs as your protein sources. Then for fats you might have things like avocado, for instance. And then your vegetable sources might be broccoli, green beans, and then your oil source might be olive oil. And then you wouldn't eat them same foods until Thursday. Okay, and so then on Tuesday you would have other foods that you hadn't had on Monday, and then on the Wednesday you would have foods that you hadn't eaten on the Monday and Tuesday, and then you're back to Thursday, and then you can start again. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you do, you can start getting a very wide variety of foods, and so you're getting a lot of different nutrients, you're getting a lot of different colours in your foods, a lot of different protein sources, and so diet induced inflammation can go down because we're not eating the same thing over and over and hit the immune system all the time. So rotational diets can vary in length of time, but the really effective ranges, like 6 months usually would be like a main thing if you were actually specifically doing a rotation diet. If you've got some severe issues, you can see some massive changes with regards to the way your body responds. So bringing down levels of inflammation, but also how you get them, how you get the foods that you're sensitive to back in your diet as well. So it doesn't, as I said, food sensitive doesn't mean to say you take it out, it's never there again. It means you're just eating too much of it, or your body's reacting to it too much, and so that you can then change it so you can reduce these levels so you don't have reactions from other foods because you haven't got this higher level of inflammation. So that's it really. I hope this has helped. If you've got any questions about intolerances, sensitivities or allergies or rotational diets or anything else along those lines, then let me know, of course. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, and I'll speak to you soon.